Walker, traveling with the president in Michigan. Thank you so much. And now let's bring in Times Washington bureau chief Michael Scherer and Democratic strategist Erikka Knuti. And Michael, as Kristen was saying, this sounded like a campaign speech, and I noted that one day after its release, Paul Ryan's budget figured prominently in this speech. I think Democrats think that his budget is a real liability for Republicans.
I think that's right. He's used it before successfully. He used it in 2012 successfully, and Republicans keep going back to that well. Minimum wage is also polling incredibly well. He mentioned 3/4 of the country is in favor of it. If you ask people whether it would change their view of who to vote for in 2014, the number's closer to 50% saying yes and 30% saying no. So it's one of these issues that he can really grab onto. It's different, though, to say that it's the silver bullet. I think he oversells what an increase in the minimum wage would do. There is a job loss that would come along with it, says the CBO. A significant portion of the money of the increase would go to people who are not in poverty. He sort of sells it as this is for people who are living in poverty, but the minimum wage is sort of a clumsy tool to deal with some of these issues. But it's a tool he has to club Republicans going into the elections.
Erikka, it did indeed sound like a campaign speech there, but not all the Dems in the Senate are going along. There are 6 folks who are not yet signing on to Tom Harkin's bill. Susan Collins has an alternate plan that would raise the minimum wage by a smaller amount, and several Dems are interested in going along with that, perhaps cover for what may happen to them this fall. And I don't understand why they would need any cover. 72% of the folks out there support raising the minimum wage, including a majority of Republicans. Wouldn't the Dems in the Senate want to push this thing hard and continue trying to message that Democrats are the defenders of the working class and the Republicans are the defenders of the wealthy?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I think it's a really important issue for Democrats. It's an identity and values issue. It highlights kind of who we are and what we stand for. We believe that hard work should not mean living in poverty. And we also believe that women should have an equal chance and have equal pay. This is not just about, kind of about younger workers or middle class. It's also about women. 2/3 of the people who earn minimum wage are women. Raising the minimum wage would close the gender pay gap by 5%, just right off the bat right there. So I think it's a very important thing. I don't think that senators should run away from this. I think they should embrace it. It's a clear contrast that it draws between Republicans and Democrats. And yes, there are some Republicans like Susan Collins, but the majority of these guys are very clear that they do not support this in any way at all. At the end of the day, what the minimum wage could do, because it's such a strong identifier for Democrats, could help drive out turnout and help drive out the activists and the grassroots. But, it could also, keep Harry Reid in the Senate Majority Leader's office, and it could have Mitch McConnell out on the unemployment line because it's very popular in Kentucky in his own race.
Right, and Erikka, Obama hit on that, saying there's a big difference between where House Republicans are at and where the majority of the country is at. We know when it comes to the minimum wage, is something that the majority of Americans support, even Republicans. And according to a new Quinnipiac poll, actually half of registered voters say they would be more likely to vote for a candidate who supports raising the minimum wage. And then the question is this issue alone enough to motivate people to get to the polls and vote? I mean, it's my sense that Democrats need to frame this as a bigger issue around fairness if it, in fact, is going to be a winning issue in 2014, as Obama talked about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It does need to be framed around fairness. It needs to be framed around women and women's work. Women are dominant in the fields that are predominantly minimum wage jobs. Home health care, personal services, and 72% of the workers that do tipped minimum wage jobs, those are those that are making $2 an hour, then relying on tips to make up the difference, are women. So I think that really need to talk about that. There are more women than there are men in this country, and women are the largest number of voters in this country. Women voters make the difference in most elections. So really talking about fairness and economic opportunity for women, I think, is a really good way to articulate this in a way that voters will understand, particularly that important, group of women.
Yeah.
Michael, what do you see as the president's key objective here? I assume he shares the view that the Republican House is unlikely to actually take up and pass a minimum wage increase. Is this about trying to get more states to take action on this and push up that number from 6 states that are raising the minimum wage? Is this really mostly just about having a campaign issue in 2014? Or is he really holding out hope that you might get a bipartisan compromise on some sort of minimum wage increase in this Congress?
No, I don't think there'll be a bipartisan compromise in this Congress, but I think you're right. He's pressuring states, he's pressuring private companies. You heard him do that in the speech just now. But the main thing here is there's really one issue that dominates American politics. It was decisive in 08, it was decisive in 12. It'll be a big issue this time, and it's that wages have been flat since 2000. The American people are furious of the fact that for most of them, their wages haven't gotten up, and they feel more squeezed every year than they did the year before. There hasn't been a political solution to that. There hasn't been an economic solution to that. And Obama has historically been better at messaging to that insecurity than Republicans have, but you know, he doesn't have the power or, I think, arguably really the plan to change it. There are the bigger forces at work here in keeping American wages down. But that's the battlefield that they want to fight the 2014 election on. They want to focus everybody back on the issue that polls say Americans care about most, which is the economy and what their own income is.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And the minimum wage is an issue where Republicans are out of step with an overwhelming majority of Americans. Michael Scherer, Erikka Knuti, thank you both.
Thank you.
And up next, the death toll rising from 2 natural disasters and what officials are now saying about missing Malaysia Flight 370. Shaping up to be a very busy news afternoon, and the Cycle's got you covered with it all. We roll on for Wednesday, April 2nd.